Mr. Walsh?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The Finance Committee met. Councilman Guz, myself, manager, CFO, deputy CFO, and our auditor, and we've come back with some of the stuff that we're omitting or voting on tonight. But one of the other things that we talked about, and I've spoken with each member of the governing body, is that this time we, as a governing body, we really believe it's in the best interest of Howell Township to stay with the dispatch on our own. There are many viable reasons to go to the county. Just at this time, we think it's best that we stay here, monitor the capital spending over the next year and a half, and then revisit it. So that's a recommendation from the Finance Committee.
Yeah, I make a motion that we adopt that proposal and that we stay with our own dispatch for the foreseeable future until the situation warrants our moving over to the county.
Second.
Well, before we do that, I'm not sure that a motion is appropriate, but we can do that if you want. But if we're going to make that motion, I'm a little concerned as to what would be the items that would necessitate it from being discussed again. Because now, if we're going to make it in the way of a motion, and I'm absolutely fine with stating that at this time this isn't the course of direction, because I've been involved in every one of those conversations as well, and I concur with you. However, anybody that I have told that to, I've explained to them what was behind the decision. We looked at the scope of service. We looked at the costs, the potential cost savings, what wouldn't be cost savings. We talked about issues with capital. We've spent countless hours on it. And as a result of that, I am aware of certain conditions that, if they were to change, that we would have a responsibility to have that conversation again. So if we're going to make a motion, I would ask you to include what those items should be.
I have no problem reopening it down the road. If some of the things that we would like to, that we would hope to see changed, I'd be glad to discuss it at any time. If anything changed as far as saving the taxpayers in both finance or in efficiency, I would strongly consider speaking about this and changing my vote.
Okay.
But at this time, where we're at, and there's a lot of pluses and minuses both ways. There really, truly are. But for speaking with members of the governing body, speak with members of the Finance Committee, this is the conclusion we came to. I'm not telling you I'm 100% zero in any direction. It's just at this time, it's what the consensus is to do. I'm voting to stay with the town at this moment. If new information came 3-4 months from now, I'd be willing to have a dialogue again. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I mean, there should be no timetable on a dialogue.
So let me just ask, because Councilman Guz is proposing a motion with no time frame. So without handicapping this governing body for future dialogue, I think it's irresponsible to have a motion when we don't even know what the time frame would be, because we all conclude that it's probably not the right time. But I don't have that crystal ball. What's the right time?
I have no problem with setting a time frame, but I think to give some certainty to our own dispatchers and to dispel any kind of uncertainty they may have about their future, I think, well, again, the proviso should be if there's some overriding reason to go to the county dispatch based on financial reasons and maybe operational reasons, yeah, that could be revisited, but we have to give them meaning our own employees and the uniformed services individuals, some certainty that this won't be an arbitrary and temporary decision. So there has to be some term that would make sense, and I don't know, 6 months to a year at the very least before I don't think anything's going to change in that period. And given what we know, and according to what Mr. Walsh had said, and I affirm his decision, because I sat in on those meetings and I sat on the dispatch committee meetings. I think it's only fair that we at least have a moratorium, I don't know, a year, I'd say, before we revisit this. We'd also see how it's working out in the county level regarding their new assumptions of their responsibilities. So
I think that would be irresponsible to make such a motion. I think that we have a job to review every issue on the basis of that individual issue, which is exactly what we did in this case. And I completely agree with every comment about the decision to not move to the county dispatch system at this time. What I do not believe we should be doing is putting ourselves into a position that we, over a course of time, which it doesn't sound like we're even sure what that course of time is, that we will not continue to review that if any one of those situations change. We're talking about a lot of money with a lot of things that affect a lot of public safety issues. And our job should be able to review those at any given time as those issues change. And to the point for our staff, I've been in that dispatch center. I've had meetings that then Captain Mayfield was at, where I stood in front of all of those dispatchers and said that we stand behind the decision to keep what we have, and at any given time, something will change. And that's exactly where we are right now. We didn't create any scenario that we're talking about here. We didn't, this issue for uncertainty on the part of the dispatchers is completely understandable, but it got put in place the day that Monmouth County put another service in place. And we didn't create that. And all we did is we reviewed that product to evaluate whether or not that serves our residents in the best possible way from a financial and service standpoint, which is exactly what we did and how we got to this conclusion that we're at now. I don't know why we need to take any further formal action on it. We've said what our direction is. I think most people who work in the dispatch center are very aware of the issues and know what every touch point is on this, whether it's a service issue, whether it's a cost savings issue. They know every single dollar amount that could be saved or not saved. So I don't think they're surprised by anything we're talking about.
What I could add to that, Mayor, and I respect your appraisal of a situation, is that this was a decision that was well thought out by us. I mean, Councilman Walsh and I sat on the Finance Committee, we sat on the Dispatch Review Committee, we've talked to our uniformed service providers, and it wasn't an easy decision to reach, and we understand the ramifications. However, I believe we're both on the same page in this matter, and I think we have to.
I said call the vote. We have a motion and a second. Call the vote.
Ms. Wellman, well.
What is your, what's the motion?
Formally make the motion, Mr. Guz.
I make the motion that we continue with our own dispatch center for the finite period of up to next July 1st, make it a little less than a year, and we could revisit the issue, at which time we'll take every other factor into consideration, both financial and operational, in terms of deciding whether we're going to move our dispatch services to the county dispatch center.
We have a second?
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Guz?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Nicastro?
No.
Mayor Gotto?
Before I vote, I want to be absolutely crystal clear, because this is going to get twisted 100 ways from Sunday.
Yeah, I know that.
I am not advocating moving to the county dispatch system today or any time in the near future. I reserve the right at any time as an elected official to evaluate every single item we've reviewed and be able to change my mind to act on the behalf of all of our residents within any time frame as an elected official. However, that motion, I vote no to.
And let me just clear the record. I want to echo his, because it will be twisted.
It's going to be absolutely
You-
twisted,
you-
ridiculous.
This is, first of all, it's a policy and a personnel decision.
Right, I don't know
Not
how it
even
become,
one
I don't
that
know
you
how it
can-
becomes a motion, but listen, that's not unusual. Councilman Guz did what he did. It was second, so I'll stand by that. But I also agree, and I want to put on the record, I don't agree that we would move our dispatch system today, knowing the information I have today. However, I think it's irresponsible that elected officials will tie their own hands on the benefit of the residents should something come up in an emergency or whatever reason. We would have to make a decision. So my vote is no, only because I do not like restraining our hands in this motion.
Our hands are never tied. We could always make another motion and have
Exactly.
another vote at any time.
That's right.
Well, then that's ridiculous to
Then
make
it's
a
ridiculous to
motion.
make the motion right
No,
now.
it's not, because we're trying to send a message to our uniformed services
The
that
message you just sent to the uniformed services is your word. You're an elected official. We had made a statement. I think Councilman Walsh made it very elegantly, that the decision amongst and the recommendation from the committee is that we're not moving. That's your word. That's your bond.
Well,
You took it a step further, made it a motion, and that motion, in my
I
opinion,
want to formalize.
restricts our hands, so
It
I'm
formalizes-
fine,
I
I'm
don't
fine.
believe that it does, and I think that we're being foolish, just wasting time and effort in this conversation debate. We know that if something comes up in an emergency or that is a large factor, we can bring it up again at any time. So I think we'll just put it to rest. Go on,
Okay,
please.
we're good.
Mother's spoken.